founded Marching for Vets, the first nonprofit of its kind in Arizona dedicated to the mental health of queer veterans. The organization hosts community building events like hikes and pickleball matches to ensure that those who once had to hide their identities now have a safe space to find support. Moving north to Colorado, we saw two very different sides of community visibility this past week. In Denver, a right-wing rally in support of an anti-LGBTQ coffee shop, Drip, was met with a vibrant counter-protest featuring the Notes of Dissent brass band. While some supporters shouted slurs and called for spiritual warfare, activists utilized music and flags to protest the shop's stance that homosexuality is, quote, a sinful lifestyle. Meanwhile, over in Golden, the 43rd Rocky Mountain Regional Rodeo provided a stark contrast as a dedicated safe space for the queer community. The event welcomed contestants ranging from 76-year-old John Beck to mother-daughter duos, all competing to break stereotypes and celebrate Western heritage. On the national stage, a viral moment from the Independence Day has taken on a life of its own. A photo of Bernita Balding riding the DC Metro, surrounded by masked members of the Patriot Front, went viral, with many calling her the contemporary Rosa Parks. However, new reporting from Notice reveals a more complex story. Bernita, who struggles with mental illness, was unaware of the group's identity at the time and was simply trying to find a moment of quiet. Her family expressed frustration that she has become a political symbol while still struggling with homelessness and health needs. In legal news, the Trump administration is facing a lawsuit filed by Public Citizen on behalf of the Iranian-American Legal Defense Fund. The suit alleges the government illegally shared confidential immigration files of Iranian asylum seekers, including queer individuals, with the government of Iran potentially risking their lives upon arrival. Finally, we look at the culture and trends shaping our world. In Durham, North Carolina, the second annual Black Trans Short Film Festival celebrated the legacy of, quote, transcestors like Polly Murray and Miss Major Griffin Gracie. The festival featured works like Chestbound and How Not to Date While Trans, highlighting the importance of Black trans storytellers shaping their own narratives. Globally, new data from Gallup shows that acceptance is on the rise, but the world remains divided. For the first time, a median of 40% of adults across 120 countries say their local area is a good place for gay and lesbian people to live, a significant increase over the past 2 decades. However, regions like Sub-Saharan Africa and the former Soviet Union continue to report the lowest rates of acceptance. That's it for this week's Lookout News Roundup. And remember, independent queer journalism only exists if it is community supported. You can read the full versions of these stories, donate to our newsroom, or check out our community events calendar by going to lookoutnews.org. Until next week, stay safe, stay informed, and look out for each other.
New episodes, local voices, big queer energy. Subscribe now to the Gay PHX podcast.
Hey, it's Barbara Seville. Join me Sundays at the Royale Kitchen and Cocktails for Flamboyance Drag Brunch. All your favorite drag entertainers, delicious food, spicy jokes. We're throwing attitude and a little bit of ass. Sundays at the Royale Kitchen and Cocktails.
You're coming like a tidal wave. We show up different, yeah, we own our space. Every shape, every color, every face. No holding back, no playing small. If you feel that fire, give it all. Feel that pressure building in your chest. No more hiding, no more second guess. It's a tidal wave. You can't hold us down. We're rising up and we're taking over now. It's a tidal wave. Feel it crash, feel it break.
All that love, all that power.
Yeah, we're coming like a tidal wave. No apologies for who we are. We came too far just to dim our
every shape and color moving in their own way. Queens with the sparkle kings, with the pride bears, with the hugs that could warm your whole side.
Femmes owning the moment, strong as the sun.
Jocks and soft boys dancing as one.
Every tone, every vibe, every story in the mix. Baby, unity looks good like this. If you're bold, if you're sweet, if you're leather or lace, tonight we all belong in the same safe space. We're all together. Come on now, ride the rainbow.
Ride the rainbow.
Every heartbeat sinks when we let the love grow. From Jack to Daddy, from Sparkle to King, we lift each other higher than we ever think. We're all together.
Come on now,
Ride the rainbow.
ride the rainbow.
No one's left behind when the whole crew shows.
Leather folks lining up, boots in a row. Harness shining like they're ready to go. Pups wagging hard with the full body joy. Handlers cheering while they hype the boy. Trans fam growing like the champions they are. Non-binary beauties dancing under the star. Every groove, every move, every face in the light. Baby, this is how pride feels right.
If you're loud, if you're quiet, if you're fierce, if you're free, you belong in this rhythm with me. We're all together.
Come on now,
Ride the rainbow.
ride the rainbow.
Every heartbeat sinks when we let the love grow. From Jack to Daddy, from Sparkle to King, we lift each other higher than we ever think. We're all together.
Come on now,
Ride the rainbow.
ride the rainbow.
No one's left behind when the whole crew
Show.
shows.
Oh, look around, you know this is our crowd. Leather lace, pup hood, ace, baby, shine in your place. We don't break, we don't bend. We build each other up again. Yo, step back, let me speak this truth. Been walking with pride since way back in my youth. We shine as one when we stand side by side. Every color, every letter in this wild ride. But hear me now, let me make it clear, there's no we. If our T ain't here, no community. Without the T in the line, there's strength, their love, they're part of the shine. From the ballroom floor to the streets, we claim every heartbeat. Got the right to flame, lift them up, lift us all. That's how we're meant to be. We rise together when we rise with
We're
the
all
T.
together.
Come on now.
Ride the rainbow. Oh, oh. Every heartbeat sings when we let the love grow. From Jack to Daddy, from Sparkle to King, we lift each other higher than we ever think.
Yeah, yeah,
We're all
yeah.
together.
Come on now.
Ride the rainbow.
Ride the rainbow.
Rise and shine. This is our show.
right, everybody. Thank you so much. Can I have our panelists please come to the front of the place? Can I have Chris, Mary, and Shelby please come? Thank you, everyone, for coming to our second to last Summer of Solutions. This is one that I am super excited to have a conversation on. Shelby, come on up. Where's Mary? Mary's right there, and Chris grabbing his drink. Oh, there we go. Is the mic up now? Is that better for people in the back? A bit more? All right, how's that? All right, wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for coming to Lookout News' Summer of Solutions Summer Camp. This is the second to last Summer of Solutions, and actually the very last panel that we're doing for the season. So for those who have never been here before, and for those who are eating, welcome to a conversation that you probably had no intention of being part of tonight, but you're going to be a part of it anyways. And for those who are here with intention, tonight is going to be something special because so at the very beginning, you know, we have tried to really make these events focused exclusively on community feedback, right? And making sure that our community has a say in not just the way the news is done, but specifically how their local newsroom is ran, right? That's something that you don't really see at a lot of newsrooms across America, especially even local newsrooms across America. And so we're excited about this conversation tonight because this is actually a great example of direct action from people within our community having a say in what we do, right? But before we get started, I'm going to give a bit of so like I said, it's the second to last of Summer Solutions. So far, we've served over 200 people, including at this event. We still have one more event next week. We're going to be watching Jawbreaker, probably in here, maybe out there, depending on the weather. If you haven't seen Jawbreaker, you are missing out on a cult classic made by a drag queen. We are also streaming tonight's event to make sure that people at home could have the ability to be involved in this conversation. Thank you to gayphx.com for streaming this conversation on their website. We'll also be putting it up on our website when it's all done. And also thank you to the Royale for hosting us, and thank you for bringing us inside tonight because it is so goddamn hot outside. And with the humidity, it's just even worse. And also thank you to the Southern Arizona AIDS Foundation for being one of our sponsors for tonight's event. And with that being done, let's talk a bit about why we're here, right? I'm going to actually give this microphone to you. So I think when we talk about, so tonight's conversation, it's themed rubbing against AI. And what does that mean, essentially? I mean, there's the obvious conversation of, like, what does AI do in the world right now? But the conversation seems to be, like, in two different places. Essentially, we're having a conversation of AI drone warfare versus people just using AI to make their emails, right? This is a very big imbalance. And so some people in the world might say, well, there's no difference between the two. And I think there's a lot of people who say, well, let's have a bit of a nuanced conversation about it, right? And then there's other people who might say, no, it's all the same and it's all fine, right? And so the point of today is to kind of come together and have that nuance and understand the gray area, right? Maybe also understand a bit of the science behind it, maybe also, but really talk about the ethics behind it. Because as we've seen within our community from the number of different places that use AI for a number of different things, people kind of use them without kind of like having an understanding of like what the effects are, but then also when maybe they do know the effects, maybe don't understand like the impacts of those effects to like the degree that it may have, but then also maybe people overestimate the effects of AI at the same time. So today we're going to have to like really break it down, and then at each of your tables there is a QR code. So this is not an AI software, just to be clear. But essentially, it's just a locked-in spreadsheet, and it allows you to scan it, and then throughout the night, throughout the conversation, and throughout the movie, what I want you to do is just take note of things that you feel are important. So, for example, you might hear somebody say something along the lines of like, maybe clarifying water usage, right? And then you might want to put down in like the notes like, I didn't know that about water usage. I still hold my view on it, or I know about water usage and I want to change my view on it, right? The entire idea is that we want to gather as many viewpoints from the community as possible to have a conversation, because this is actually what newsrooms do behind the scenes, right? Behind closed doors, newsrooms kind of say, these are our ethics, and they battle it out among editors. But rarely do they ever involve the community to have the conversation about it. So that is the goal today. So put out every single thought, every single ethics that you can think of, and put it into this spreadsheet, because at the very end, we're going to culminate it all together, and then we're going to start surveying the community based around what you all put out there today. And then at some point over the next month, hopefully, with my schedule, we're going to try to put something together for the community, not just for us to hold on to, so you can hold us accountable for whatever, or if ever we use AI, but then also other community members within our community say, like, listen, we as a community kind of decided that this is what we're going to use it for. So if you are using it for art and we say don't use it for art, guess what, motherfuckers? Don't use it for art. Or if you do, then expect backlash, right? Because I think that is kind of like where we kind of need to level set. Cool? That being said, what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to go down this line, and I'm going to have each of these people just explain your name, pronouns, who you are, and then start off by, like, what are the values that you're bringing tonight that you think will help level set this conversation? I'll start with you, Chris.
Well, my name is Chris Hooper, and I kind of live in the gig economy world of today. I'm 56 years old. I'm an ex-gen, and my career was in restaurant management. And then now I do storytelling. I do storytelling shows in the community. And also I teach corporate workshops on improv, which I've been doing for 14 years. That was my side gig, and now that I'm kind of like retired, I get to do that as my full-time gig. And I started AI in the beginning with ChatGPT. So it's been, 3-4 years, something like that. So I've been there with every iteration as it changed. Does it do all my thinking for me? Absolutely not. Does it assist me? Absolutely does.
So what values are you bringing tonight?
So in all of that, I think the value tonight, when I thought about AI, whether a pro or con, I'm somewhere in the middle. And that gray area, I think that's where we're at right now. And so I don't want to be a doomsayer, but I understand that's the possibility. I also don't want to say it's going to solve all our problems, but I think that's a possibility. And I'm bringing the values. Tonight, I would say I'm more pro AI at this moment with what it does for me and what it does in my community, and helps me assist a lot of things. And I just crossed over to giving it access to my emails. So it's kind of this moment. I would say I'm right in the middle.
Shelby, introduce yourself and what you do, and then what are the values that you think are important to hold when we're talking about AI?
Hi, everyone. Hello? Yes. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Shelby. I'm a journalism professor at ASU. I am extremely hardcore pro AI. I'm kind of an unlikely figure to hold these pro AI views because prior to my current job, I spent 2 years studying the ways that people misuse AI to cause harm, focusing specifically on how people use AI to create sexually explicit imagery of children and then extort children with that content. So I really know quite a bit about the dark side of AI, and yet I'm also extremely pro AI at the same time somehow. So that is my complicated position.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay? It's hard to tell when you're actually speaking into Okay. Hi, I'm Mary. Mary Katrib, they, them. I'm a PhD candidate and a researcher with expertise in communication, cultural, and queer and trans studies. I think it's important to state that all of these views are my own from my own expertise, reading, and background, so I just want to lead with that. And then I also want to, as far as the values question, I am not pro or anti-AI. What I am is pro-liberation, pro-land back, pro-abolition of prisons and police, and how does AI fit into people's material survival, right? It's less important to me, like, what we're doing with AI and what is AI doing to us. So the values that I'm bringing are, and I know Lookout is a queer and trans organization and kind of focus, which is fantastic, trans liberation without liberation for Black folks, for Indigenous folks, for every other single person and group, without access for disabled folks. So those are the values that I'm bringing, and my expertise is not in AI, but my expertise is in queer and trans liberation movements, in thinking about colonization, colonialism, at it from very much that angle of what are the best ways we can take care of each other and keep each other alive, and what are the potential harms, again, of our material survival, because that's what I'm most concerned about, and I'm glad that we are all here and all alive and able to have this conversation. So yeah, I'm just glad we're all alive. Let's stay alive.
And I actually want to put this first question to you, Mary, because to your point, and I think maybe just kind of put like an underscore of what you're saying, is that there's a lot of conversation around AI actually furthers criminality, right? How people within the government can use AI. Listen, flock cameras, right? Like a great example of using AI to further criminalize populations, to use AI for arguably what we could probably not nefarious reasons, but definitely more governmental intrusive reasons, right? And so that like underscores kind of what you're saying. So, you know, one of the first question I wanted to ask for everybody, but to kind of start with you and kind of with that underlying foundation, I'm curious to know where you've seen AI really harm communities. But then I also would love to hear if you've ever seen AI actually used for good, and then if that is something that you could stand by. So let's start with that, and I'll go down the same.
Yeah, few areas of harm, because I think unfortunately there are lots. So I think it's important too, when we're having this discussion about AI, to abstract up our analysis a level. So for example, if you're an educator, which I am, a lot of my students use AI, and we could, say, oh, they're being lazy or taking shortcuts or don't care. But actually, if we go up a level, they're living under racial capitalism. So some of my students are working a full-time or a part-time or multiple part-time jobs, and they don't have time to learn. So what would it mean for them to have the time, right? What does AI look like in a world that's not under capitalism, right? So if we move it up a level, or like, what would it look like if, your newsroom had the resources to not have to rely on AI? So I think that part of the harm is that it's pushing this capitalist productivity, which is inherently ableist, among other things, to just go, 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 and not giving us the time to slow down and do the things that we want to be able to do. So that's not an AI thing. AI is a result of a bunch of other systems, right? And then as far as good, I mean, it's hard because going back to, there's no like liberation for just some or others. Nobody should have to be sacrificed. So I could hear the argument of, oh, AI made something more accessible for me. But is it at the cost of a higher electric bill down the line? Is it at the cost of data on indigenous sacred lands? Everything's on indigenous land, but there's obviously more they're trying on certain sacred lands, right? Or certain places. So I think that, it's hard to say because you can't see everything in the moment. So for me, I'm more concerned with, how can we get back to talking about the things that are actually going to help? And also my issue too is people will say, oh, well, you don't care about access. AI can be helpful for disabled folks. And what else are they doing to fight ableism? You arguing for universal health care? You helping people get their meds? You out doing harm reduction, right? And thinking about like the brutal Phoenix Park ordinance. So it's like you don't get to use any group of people as your scapegoat. And I think that's really important.
I think it's a good point. Shelby.
Yeah, on the one hand, just to get to your question in a second, but I do agree that many students are using AI for cheating. But I'll also just note in my own experience as an educator, the vast majority of college students I've interacted with at the Cronkite School at ASU do not want to be using AI. And when I come into the classroom,
they're really against it. Like
they're super
so
against it. Yeah, so I think it's a complicated set of preferences that students have about AI. And then I'll just say, it is absolutely true that for example, authoritarian governments are using AI to harm people like 100%. And I think that's actually an argument for everyone else to get really good at using AI so that we can be operating at their level, so that human rights defenders in authoritarian countries are using AI in the same way that the government is using it, so there can be that kind of balance of societal government power. Yeah. And then in terms of
I actually have a question. I want to follow up on, not follow up, or maybe even push back a bit on that, because when I hear that, I go, is this a race to the bottom? Because if all of us are trying to use a technology to essentially gotcha each other, at what point are we saying, maybe let's hold back on that? Or are we resting on our laurels at that point?
I mean, like, it's done. Like, AI is out there. There's no, like, putting it back in the bottle. Like, I've downloaded a local model on my own little laptop. Like, you can't take that back from me, even if you wanted to, like, shut down OpenAI or something like that. So it's done, I think. And I think sometimes when people think about AI, they're thinking about chatbot usage and asking a chatbot a question about facts. And 10% of the time, you get back something that's wrong. And then you're like, oh, is it a race to the bottom because this tool kind of sucks? But I think that's kind of missing the point on how you can really be using AI, in particular like agentic AI, like a tool called Claude Cowork, where you can do web scraping and you can do a lot of tasks where hallucination is kind of like irrelevant. So I don't know if I would agree with the framing of race to a bottom. I think these tools are really powerful, and of course they do make stuff up, but also they're really powerful.
Chris, your thoughts?
Yeah, and I mean, going through each iteration, you can see as you use it that it's getting better. So as far as hallucination goes, those become less and less. I mean, logically, you would say eventually it's going to be unrecognizable between them and us in some ways. And so, you're not going to have hallucinations like we've had in the past. It's already better than that. So, I mean, and that's just a personal use. I think harm-wise, I've thought about AI, and I'm like, and we've talked about these things that are very, very important to our society. But if you just push back maybe another generation and you think about social media, like social media, we are abundantly aware of the damage that it's causing to us, yet I often find people at bars, at restaurants, sitting there together on their phones, scrolling, sharing their phones, doing this stuff. And if you ask them, is that good? They'd say no. I have a mix of friends from all generations. I go out a lot. They're on their phones. I go, I'm that guy. I'm like, because I don't bring my phone in. And I say, put your phones down. And they don't argue with me. They know. And guess what they do? They put it away. And I think what I'm trying to say with that, as far as harm goes, so we were after it happened, and then we are talking about it after, the harm that happened after it happened. And so here we are in the middle, right? And we haven't even completely dealt with social media and the effects that has on your mental health and your relationships and all of those things. And now we're talking about AI, and I see that's a possibility of it just speeding that up. When you talk about things that are fundamental to like our lands and all of those things, like that's not AI. That's our government. That's a separate issue. That's who we have. AI is just AI.
That goes to a question I'm going to ask later. But before I ask that, I want to go back to Shelby real quick. More about a question about, what could be or really should be, at least in your mind, should be hands off. So use it in journalism, right? Journalists have used things like Google Pinpoint for, God, I think I first touched Google Pinpoint 10 years ago. And that's a web scrape. It's a scraping tool. It's an OCR tool. It's a translation tool. It's something that we've been using for, a long time. And I think I only learned like a couple of years ago that it was AI based. But to Mary's point, there's an argument to be had in the journalism world where we are using so many of these tools not because they better our work, but because of survival, right? Because funding for news has gone down, because care for news has gone down, because subscriptions have gone down. We overwork our reporters to do twice as much as work with a third of the budget. So we no longer want to make sure that our reporters are going out and doing the breaking news or doing the sports stories. We're having AI write it. So it doesn't necessarily, it's not a situation of AI is a solution for good. It's AI is a solution of necessity. So I wonder, with that, I wonder if you can still make a case for AI within journalism, knowing the fact that maybe people like you and I are using it for good in that way, but our bosses, and Michael Crow's your boss, I'm my own boss right now, but like when I was at Gannett, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking of coin and dollar. So what's the case there?
I think a lot of things can be true at the same time. I think everything you just said can be true, and it can be true that AI can be an equalizer in the workplace. So in the context of journalism, it used to be that data journalists were the only people who knew how to do web scraping. And now you can do it in a second with Claude Cowork. And data journalists are no longer like the gatekeeper for that skill set. I had a student the other day who he was on the Department of Justice website, and there were 200 links to PDFs. And he was able to download these PDFs in seconds into like a folder on his computer. And that would have just taken, even for a data journalist, that would have taken hours, if not days, to code up the Python to like figure out how to, code all of that. So I mean, I could just maybe only speak from my personal experience. I've just found it so empowering to have the skills that in the past only my colleagues had. And I don't know, I found that experience really empowering.
Do you feel it makes your role as a data journalist irrelevant? Like, so I think of when I was at the Arizona Republic, we did this big data scraping tool against the Department of Corrections, and it took my co-reporter who was a data reporter, it took him days to build that scraper. Days, because it was so complicated and so DOC is so crazy. But now, to your point, your student just built something, maybe not exactly the same, but something very similar in a couple hours, right? Did it make you worried that your peers might be out of a job?
It doesn't. In the same way that I think any of you who have expertise in whatever thing you have expertise in, and you've tried to use AI and you've seen how it failed in kind of interesting ways, like I think we all have that expertise that we bring to the table, and the data journalist that I work with still gives us all advice on how to think about research questions to ask with data and how to ensure that the code that we're writing is replicable and systems and that kind of stuff. So I think anyone who's used AI for their own job kind of knows its limitations, and I'm sure there are jobs that people are going to be losing their jobs due to AI, but at least in the context of data journalism, like there's definitely still value. I
also think of like the time period when a lot of people were losing their jobs in like the manufacturing world in the middle of America, but rural farmers and stuff like that were losing their jobs because of technology and everything. And the big argument was that they would often say is like, learn how to code, right? And now that was like 5 years ago, right? And now you could just like jump on chat and like learn how to code. So it's just an interesting way of like how things evolve. But Mary, I want to ask you this question. So much of the conversation that we've had tonight has been a bit about not necessarily the technology itself, but how the technology is used and the harm or the benefit of it. I wonder if you could maybe talk about do you feel that there is a harm in the technology, or is it really just like when we're talking about the values that you brought at the very, is there a harm in the technology, or is there a harm in just who wields it?
Yeah, real quick, I just want to go back to the point that you were making about AI being a separate issue, because it's really important to say it's not just coming from nowhere. There are AI data centers, and those are on indigenous land, period. And if people want to read more about it, even the New York Times, of all places, is criticizing big tech for doing this on indigenous lands. Not necessarily my favorite source, but if even they're saying it. Also, if you go to the White House website, the Trump administration's AI action plan from last year calls it the new frontier of AI. So it's just signaling the colonial language, like right there. You don't even have to go look for it. So definitely not separate. These data centers are material things. That needs to be a part of the conversation. But to your question about, is it technology itself, obviously there are more nefarious ways to use it than others. You already brought up Flock. Project Red Wolf is how they are upholding Israeli apartheid and facial recognition of Palestinians and controlling border crossing, right? And we also know that the U.S. sends U.S.-Mexico border agents to Israel as examples. So these borders are not, separate from us. We're seeing all of this happen transnationally. So obviously those are really horrible ways to use certain technology. Now, do I think that, a well-meaning journalist using it for their job or a college student using it to look something up is inherently a bad thing just by the act of them wanting to use that technology? No, but I can't separate it out like that when we know, environmental racism,
when you take
usage,
it way
etc.
up, yeah.
Right, like I was looking some things up before this, and the International Energy Agency was saying that in a year, one data center is using as much as 200,000 households, right? So, at some point, and even, people have been saying this, another recent article, I forget which energy company, like a CEO or C-level employee was saying that, they're concerned about blackouts or rolling blackouts in the future. So it is a concern. So for me, it's like, well, I could say, okay, sure, using it to make a poster isn't the end of the world, but if everybody's using it to make a poster, maybe it is.
want to pass over to Chris now, because to the point of you just made making a poster, right? I think one of the things that kind of gets lost in the minutia of the conversation is like, when you query chat or Claude for a text response, it uses like almost no water. But when you query it for like art, it uses a shit ton of water, right? And so because like the pixelization, everything like that. But I'm wondering, to the point of like what Mary was talking about, like if everybody's using it for posters, then it becomes a problem. Within your line of work, Chris, not only is gig economy, but also within art and everything, where has the line drawn for you? It sounds like you sound like you're in the middle, but I mean, also at the same time, it sounds like you like, I'm willing to do anything to test out the waters, per se. Sorry for the pun. But like it sounds it's like what ethical boundaries do you have with it? Because I think a lot of people would look at like, I mean, Stacy's, for example, and be like, what the fuck are you doing with all that shit? And then people would also look at any of the social media posts and be like, why are you using it for captions? Like, I think at what point are you as an artist and somebody who leads artists saying that's not something we should ever let AI touch?
Well, I mean, when you talk about an artist, starting out, say in the beginning, and you're using AI to assist you in things that you would normally have to pay somebody to do, that's all great in theory. And that's all great saying, oh, you should hire an artist to do that. You should. But the reality of the situation is artists in the beginning and starting to increase and growing their business, they need help and can't afford it. And so using AI helps them bridge that gap, and I'll create a team for myself that I couldn't normally hire. I couldn't hire 6 different people to manage the what I'm putting through it. So I think, the value of that for people, normalizing and equalizing is really, really important. I also think, the issues that she was talking about, those are big issues and very important ones that they were talking about are very, very important. Those are really, to me, those are the values that we should talk about. Those are the important things that happen on large scale with people making decisions without us involved in those decisions. And that's where I think, God, leave that artist alone that's just starting out and making a poster. I mean, you're not going to go see them because they made a poster on AI. When we have these really important issues to deal with, when we have people, using it in very, very bad ways and making decisions without us, that's where my value lies. Like, that's where my focus is. And as an artist myself, I just did a poster. We had art done for a show that we do here. I did that poster. I put it through AI, and I said, can you just jazz it up a little bit? And then, did some prompts, and it made it great. It was our original art, but we jazzed it up and put it out there, right? Now you're not going to come and see my show because I did that? Let's think about what's really, really important. What's really important are the ones who are making the decisions to allow really important things to go unseen, unheard, and that's what I think. There's my value.
And so I think well, go ahead, Shelby. Go ahead.
I just adding on what Christopher is saying, I think like the question to ask when someone's criticizing how someone else uses AI is, what's the counterfactual? So it's like, if you're saying someone shouldn't use AI to make a poster, what's the counterfactual? Maybe they don't have money to hire someone to, graphic designer or whatever, so they're going to spend hours doing it in, I don't know, Google Slides manually themselves. And what do we lose from that? Well, first of all, Google Slides is also using energy that's coming from data centers. And also, what could that person's time have been used for, if they had more free time? Like in my case, I have kids at home, and I want to get home by 5 o'clock, to be with them. And so that's kind of one thing that's going through my mind. But I just think like the big question of what is the counterfactual here when you're criticizing someone's AI usage can be really helpful.
No, thank you. I'm thinking about the poster example, and I guess I have a few responses. One, both of your guys' answers, it sounds like, are pointing to like time, resources, and I totally get that. So again, we're back to capitalism problem, right? And that's a real limitation, and I'm not saying we have to be perfect, because I think harm reduction is important here, and I think that's important to bring in. But then also, like, I don't think that I've ever been like, oh, I need the event I go to have a very professional poster, like bring back camp, bring back punk, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, I mean,
make
there's
a
also
stupid
at this point
poster.
there's been such a pushback. Now we have like people online being like, I will make your poster for $10. Like, we've even people like saying like, I will go to your event if it's stick drawn at this point, because
Yeah.
so there is like that, there is that little bit of like and it also I don't, go ahead, I don't want to cut you off.
No, that was my main point of just like make a stupid poster.
Well, because one thing that I think is really interesting right now, and I'm a huge fan and a huge student of history, right? And I always try to like pinpoint when times when in history we've always railed or rubbed against a certain technology to the point where there has been the counter that has kind of risen as like the opposite side. And I try to think of like AI as like the Industrial Revolution, right? Where we had this massive influx of technology that was kind of used against our will, and it polluted our airs, and it killed a bunch of kids, and it killed a bunch of adults, and only afterwards was it finally regulated, and then we kind of went back, right? What came out of that, the Roaring '20s, all this different stuff that was kind of grungy and kind of weird, stuff that we kind of look back on as like being alt, and right now it kind of feels like people don't want the prim and polished look of AI, to the point where like they're like, give me a stick figure fucking poster. Like, that is more attractive, and I think that's actually it's been actually a benefit for us, because like, so whenever I can always tell when we've hired somebody and they've used AI for designing anything from us, because we have such a grunge and like and look, I can always tell when somebody is using AI, because it always looks too clean. And I'm just like, oh, I know, like, hey, you weren't supposed to do that, now I can fire you. But then on top of it, like, cool, like, I know that, like, we have a certain look that can't be replicated through AI. Which also, to your point, not to your point, but I think to add to the conversation of, like, AI can't be an artist, because it's essentially replicating what already is being done, right? I see hands. That's perfect, because I was going to go to lightning rounds. Go ahead and introduce your... Oh, shit, we're going to be too far. Introduce yourself and make your point.
Yeah. Question. I work with Shelby at Arizona State University, also in the Cronkite School, and I'm a journalist with data journalism background. And one of the things that I've been curious about, because this conversation has been kind of got co-opted by this poster idea, but one of the selling points for AI was that it would solve world hunger and cure cancer. And so but it's not. And I think to your point is like, that's not what we're doing with AI. We're not curing cancer. We're not collecting all data that we can about why water is poisoned when you try to grow crops. Like, we're not fixing our problems. And I'm really curious, why not? Why the hell not? And how do we do that?
And the document that we're going to watch, there is this one line that sticks with me. It's also in the trailer, but it says, AI can be great if we're the most responsible version of ourselves. And to me right now, it doesn't seem like all of us are that responsible, right? There's like a handful of us that are probably like, yeah, we can probably be trusted with a certain amount of technology, but, en masse, I mean, fuck humanity. But who wants to take that question? Shelby, go ahead.
I think, like, maybe it is. And I think maybe the AI companies are doing a really bad job of selling the story, because every time, I'm just so curious about how random professions are like using AI. And so I met a woman the other day who was a therapist, and I was like, hey, do you find it super annoying when your patients come to you and are like, oh, I had this long conversation with ChatGPT about XYZ? And she was like, I love it. She's like, I'm finding that they use it to prepare for our conversations. And that was never a perspective I had heard before. And I think the AI companies are just, I don't see the AI companies really, I don't think they know how it's being used yet. And yes, it hasn't solved world hunger. It hasn't, cured cancer yet. But I do think there has been incremental progress that isn't really being sold to the public.
I mean, I agree with you. I think that goes back to the idea of us being in the gray right now in this moment of change, like the Industrial Revolution. It's the beginning, and so the two sides are out there. They're like, it's doom or savior, and we can add up all the stuff that's bad, but can we add up all the stuff that's good? like she was saying, do we have the information yet to do that? And that's critical thinking. We need that information to be able to balance, what's going on. And maybe as a society we are not ready, and I get that, but I agree with you. It's out. The genie is out of the box. It's going to happen. So maybe slowing down for our sakes, because we're not mature enough yet to be able to use it in the ways that will help humanity. I think maybe that is an important step.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I guess I'm a bit confused on how we're using the Industrial Revolution analogy, if it's a positive or a negative thing.
Oh, a negative.
Oh, okay. Okay, making sure, because I was like, the same one that killed a bunch of immigrant laborers. So I guess, unfortunately, to go back to the capitalism level, they're not going to cure cancer as long as it makes as much money as it does on treatment and as long as there's medical debt. So, I mean, that's so fucked up and so sad, but is the reality, right? So I think that we're not going to use these tools for these things under racial capitalism.
It goes back to kind of like, this is such like, what I love about this conversation and also hate about this conversation is that there is no right answer, right? There seems to be a lot of like, everybody understands the harms, but everybody is also kind of capitulating to, but it's already here, and how can it be used ethically? And I guess one of the big questions that I am still I don't think I have answered yet, is there, just like we can kind of say there's no such thing as ethical consumption under capitalism, is there any such thing as ethical AI under capitalism? And I think the answer might be no matter what. But that's from my perspective and my understanding. I'm wondering if anybody else feels similarly. I mean, maybe Mary's the only one that agrees with me there.
I'll just be brief so that y'all can answer. But I think that, oh gosh, I just had a thought and then it escaped me. To the point of, I get that the technology is already here, right? I could pick up my phone, which I guess is over there, so I'd have to walk over there. But I could pick up my phone and I could, get access to a bunch of different ways to use AI. I totally understand that. But I also think if we were having this conversation 50 years ago, 100 years ago, go back, there were things that were like, that's just a part of reality. And then guess what? There were people like to say, we're at a queer and trans Oregon event. The first Pride was a riot. I think it's also important to note that people have been scapegoated in movements. So like, okay, well, if this is, gonna, cause environmental racism to those groups over there, let's not forget, and this is an unfortunate part of queer and trans history, the gay liberation movement scapegoated brown, black, and trans folks and largely abandoned them. The first Pride was a riot, and at the first Pride parade, Sylvia Rivera was beat up on her way to the stage to try and talk. And if you've never seen that video, you should. It's from the 1972 Christopher Street Day Parade. So it's important to not be like, okay, well, I, who am not largely at risk of the AI harms, I'm going to use it and not worry about those harms, right, when we have to be thinking about everyone, right? And again, harm reduction, I'm not arguing for any kind of purity politic. I get that. But at the same time, I am not willing to leave groups behind, and I know that that happens.
It goes to the point of like kind of to your point, maybe to put a period on it, that we oftentimes see right now that as long as it doesn't affect me, I am willing to go along with the problem when the problem will eventually come for you, right?
And if we were going to ever know that, now seems like a time.
Exactly. All right. Anybody else want to pitch into that the conversation?
I just want to say in regards to that too, I think about, as we go along this process and start dealing with AI in whatever way we decide to do it, whether you decide to not use it or use it, or, it reminds me when you were talking about queer history, like I became HIV positive in 92. Nobody wanted to do any of that work to make sure that we weren't dying anymore. We had to do it ourselves. We had to jump into a capitalistic system that did not believe in who we were, didn't care if we were dying or living, and we had to go in and make a change. And it was a hard fight, and it was a long one. But I take one pill a day. And I take more medication for my hypertension than I do for my HIV.
And that's an interesting point because it goes to your point, Shelby, which is fascists are already using it. Authoritarians already use this. We've seen governments that, are using AI to essentially put down the population. So to your point, and to kind of piggyback off your point that you made earlier, it almost feels like a disservice to not get into the systems of training the resistance into the technology to fight back. And then it goes to what I was asking earlier about the race to the bottom and stuff like that. And so again, it's all gray areas that don't make this conversation any easier. But any other final thoughts before I do kind of engagement with the audience?
I just want to say I would agree with that. Part of the conversation is get in there and use it. Don't be left out. Who are you leaving out when you choose not to use it? You're leaving out the people that are making those choices and the choices that you don't, you know what I mean? Get in the conversation, be a part of it, use it, learn about it, and then you know what you're talking about. You can go in and just, it's an equalizer as well, is what I'm saying. And if you decide you're not going to be, somebody is going to be. And I hate that idea, but it's just the facts, is how I look at it.
So, do you want to add anything before?
The last thing I'll just say is I think some people are really reluctant to want to embrace it because of the environmental reasons. I'm a vegan. I really care about the environment. So I've looked into this issue quite a bit. I've been interviewing environmental experts, in particular water experts in Arizona on this. And what I've learned is that it's hard to get good numbers, but for 2024, when we have numbers, Google used 8 billion gallons of water for data centers for the year. That's not just AI, that's the YouTube, that's everything. And in a 4-day period, US golf courses use that same amount of water. So I'm not saying that's good or bad, but I just think, I kind of sometimes wonder why people aren't up in arms about golf courses, using water.
Or meat, or oil. Meat is a great example. Yeah.
Wait, sorry, did you? Too. Sure. Yeah. Fair. Okay. Yeah.
It's like it's also like when it comes to meat, the meat industry. Like I think what is it? What was
I see. Yeah.
Yes, that's also so. This yeah. So I'm gonna try to interact in the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes before we get to the movie. I want so you all have a QR code, right? We've gotten a lot of discussions, probably few answers, and that's okay because ethics is not supposed to be yes or no. It's supposed to guide your decisions. And so scan the QR code if you haven't already. But one question I want to ask around, and I would love people if they raise their hands and want to say something, but essentially if you scan the QR code and you put this down or you haven't put this down yet, what I want to ask is if you were making an ethics rule for your family right now, for the people that you care about, the people that you love about, and you had to put one parameter, one big, huge parameter on what they could use around a technology, right? What would that number one thing be? And it can't be just don't use it, because using your phone is using it. So, sorry? No. I want you to type it so I can have a record of it. But then also, I would love to just kind of hear so we can at least start some kind of public conversation. I'm going to go to you.
Hi, so I was going to do a really specific example. I would say absolutely no chatbot AI usage. We have a very good family friend whose high school student was heavily using ChatGPT to plan his suicide attempt, which was successful, and the logs literally show him getting advice from ChatGPT on how to hide his suicide from his family. It is absolutely devastating. It is horrific to me that we're putting ChatGPT in our schools with our kids whose minds are tiny and young and don't have the adult mindset of, hey, this is not what should be happening. I need to step away. So that's my perspective on it.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
I would say my one rule about we're just talking about AI, right? Not like technology in general.
I would prefer conversation around because this is a technology, right? And this
yeah.
is a technology that can be harmful, can be beneficial. And in a case like that, if you were to put ethics guidelines around yourself to make decisions, what would the number one thing that
I guess I was thinking about this earlier. I would say not using AI for any sort of art, like including writing as well. Just I I don't think it's good. I don't think it's useful. And I think it's a waste. And kind of to the conversation that you all were having about like maybe making an AI, like maybe you don't have the money to hire someone. It's like since this all really ramped up, I've been seeing a lot of stuff online about like people encouraging. Okay, so like I saw something for the downtown Phoenix farmers market, and they were saying like we don't want our vendors to use AI, but we're not telling you to like we want people to comment, and if you have services to offer, then go ahead. And I think it's also like a really good opportunity for people who are just like starting out and are willing to like do it for low cost or for free just to get experience, which like I'm one of those people. I will make your poster for $10, you know? So can I mention one more thing? Okay. I also wanted to mention I can't believe we went this whole conversation talking about capitalism and like the I guess AI as or like ethics of AI itself without talking about the people who make it. Like the AI is not a neutral tool. Like AI has racism and all of those other things like baked into it. Partially just because they get all their data from Reddit. Again, partially because of the people who make it, and the people who make it are also in bed with the government and actively using it against us, like with Flock. So
two things. Oh, shit. Two things. One, so we are part of a co-working space called Cahoots. If you know about it, it's a fantastic space. It's a lot of impact makers, and one of the things they do on their wall, right, is give or take. Like I am a writer and I know video and I know audio, and I can do really quick video and audio clips really simply in like half an hour. And honestly, sometimes I'm just like sitting at my desk doing nothing anyways, and so I can provide that service to anybody if they need help. I might need help with code or something. And so there's this wall of give take where it's basically communal. So what I'm hearing from you, one ethics consideration is if there is ability to use the services within the community that is cheap and available and within your timeline, use that. Is that a fair ethics consideration? Cool.
Sorry, I don't want to talk too much, but the other thing. Oh wait. Oh God, I might have lost it. Hold on.
All right. So like within that kind of framework, if you can do this, then do that. If you can't do that, then let's have a conversation. Okay. Your name and your.
My name is Stephanie. I am also a teacher at ASU. I am a PhD candidate, a fifth-year student, and I want to kind of share briefly a little quick story. A student was like, "Oh, for my public speaking class, I'll just run my ideas because they have to come up with ideas for their persuasive speech." They're like, "I'll just go do it with ChatGPT," and I'm like, "Well, I have 10 minutes right now. Why don't you just talk to me, your teacher? I'm paid to do this." And they're like, "You're right. I can do that." And we had a 10-minute conversation, and they go, "Wow, that was more helpful than if I had gone to ChatGPT." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm trained in this exact thing. You should utilize and exhaust all options. If going to the ethical, like what would be the ethical rule I'd make for my home, extended family, exhaust all options in your community. Because if we're not turning to our community, in a lot of conversations around AI, it's like how it helps me is what I hear. Oh, it helps me do this. It helps me get to this. But I'm like, but you are a community member. You are just one person in a community of, let's say, Phoenix downtown, Melrose, the larger Maricopa area. How are you putting back into your community? If you are using AI and you've exhausted, quote unquote, all resources and you have decided to use AI, is your AI use actually putting into your community, or is it only benefiting yourself for a small portion of a window? And that's what I'm kind of always going back to. And the answer is always, it doesn't. And I know for myself, I will exhaust all possibilities. I will go through my networks and be like, does anyone know how to do this? Okay, you have a friend, let me contact them. And it does come down to a cost thing. And like you're saying, the give and take. that is a way to negotiate that cost and to see, like, is there anyone who's learning videography in a class right now and wants practice? I need to make some videos. Is there anyone who is in like these kind of different courses or learning these skills? How can I boost you up? And that, I think, is what's important.
I love that, actually, because when I think about like some of the things that we have like not done because we don't want to use AI for something because we don't want the pushback from our community, but also like when I think of like we didn't do a bunch of like long form video for a while because we just didn't have the resources. I also don't like the way the AI makes long form video. I think it's tacky looking. But I have always, like, even as a nonprofit, I'm like, I don't want to not pay somebody. The work is important. But I'm also like, I'm a nonprofit. I'm allowed to use volunteers. And maybe there are volunteers out there that actually want to fucking do this work. So Jake doesn't really count because he's the executive director, but I'm going to let him talk anyways.
No, I just hi, I'm Jake. I'm the executive director for Lookout. And I think one thing that, and maybe this was talked about, but I had to go take a call because maybe AI was a part of it, but $1,000 of fraud just happened on my debit card. So I just figured that out, so I missed the first part. So I'm sorry if this is a rehashing. But I think one thing that's interesting for me is that there's been a lot of conversation in community, especially around smaller businesses and smaller businesses using AI. And the community sort of rallying against that a lot, right? But I don't see a lot of people grabbing pitchforks and torches for the larger Fortune 100, the Fortune 500 companies that have the money, that have the people, that have the resources to not have to use AI. But when we talk about smaller queer-owned businesses that do not have the same access to capital, I'm going to throw Stacy's out there, right? I don't fully agree with everything that Stacy's did with Mother and the AI thing that they had, but they did it as a way to help save costs. Where do we, as smaller organizations, mission-based organizations, community-serving organizations and businesses fall into that, and why do the larger organizations get a pass, but we have a greater opportunity to get canceled online in community because we don't have the same funding, the same resources, the same like revenue streams?
So I was going to have it do a lightning round, and one of the questions was going to be a nonprofit with zero budget wants to translate their materials to 12 different languages to help immigrant communities. Yes or no, right? But I am canceling the lightning round because I think the conversation we've had so far shows that it's not a yes or no, right? It is such a gray area, and to that point, I think it's really interesting, right? Because what I'm still hearing, and I think it's almost like what I'm hearing from people, at least in this room, is that there is not a pass for the larger companies that are doing it. However, do we hold ourselves to similar standards no matter what, right? And to the point I heard right here, and the point I heard right here, and to some degree the point I heard right here, which is the fact that what do we do if we can't exhaust all options? Have we exhausted all options as a small business, and especially as a nonprofit, to utilize our resources the best that we can within our community to also elevate the people within our community that can do the work that we're looking AI to do, right? So maybe crunching fundraising numbers is not something anybody in our community has the capacity or the knowledge set to do for free, right? And maybe that's something that $50,000 is not in a nonprofit's budget to do. Maybe that is a conversation for Claude. Maybe it is, right? Or maybe there's a grant that opportunes that. So I have to cut it there because we have to start the movie because they close at a certain time. But I want to I want to leave with everybody on this this panel just, and this is one of the questions, I'm kind of making this ad lib, which is, did anything change in your mind tonight? Did anything blossom in your heart and your mind that made you change things, or just not even change, but gave perspective? Because that's the entire point of this entire summer series. It's not to change minds, it's to offer perspectives that maybe we have not heard before. So I'm going to start with you, Chris, and then go down. What has happened tonight that maybe brought different perspectives that you hadn't heard before?
That I haven't heard before. I mean, honestly, probably not a lot. Not a lot has changed.
So I didn't do my
it
job.
has
I
made me
apologize.
What's that?
So I didn't do my job. I apologize,
no.
everybody.
No, but it has made me think about our own community. You know, I liken it to, I mean, this is what's standing out in my mind. It's like, you know, the problem with plastics in America. And then they try to make us take care of the problem when the giant problem isn't us individually putting our little plastic bottle in the garbage bag. It's these huge corporations and companies that they are the waste, they are creating the problem, and they always put it on us. And I think that's the same situation. That is a capitalist problem. And I think that's maybe my takeaway, which it always has been, that maybe we need to keep our eye on the prize and not fight amongst ourselves, especially in our own community, and just support us. You know, I use it to help me be better. I never used it to take care of stuff. I did everything from the beginning. I created all my flyers on Canva. I don't know how much energy Canva uses, but I bet you it's a lot.
Fuck, now it's like automatic AI. I had to turn it off today.
Yeah, and like she was saying with Google, like AI companies are going to Google to ask to use their energy. So I just want you to like be aware of what's going on in the big picture, and help each other out. Yes, communicate more. Yes, and maybe say yes to people more, and not no, especially online and social medias. That's probably my takeaway.
I think the perspective I found most interesting. Sorry, what was your the teacher? What was your name again? Oh, Stephanie. Okay, I think I found Stephanie's perspective most useful. Your kind of anecdote about a student not asking you for feedback and instead going to ChatGPT, because I was thinking my team has a guy who's really good at WordPress, but he doesn't, like, I kind of see it as I'm doing him a favor when I ask AI for WordPress help as opposed to going to him so that he can use his time to do kind of other stuff. So I think both can be true. And yeah, both can be true. Because I would also be sad as a teacher if a student didn't ask me for help, you know, in the classroom environment. So everything's true.
Yeah, I know you said the point wasn't opinion changing, so obviously I don't think, even who can have their opinion changed in such a short amount of time. So that hasn't changed. I think that what was helpful about tonight is, I am around a lot of people who are politically like-minded, and that's not an accident, and I'm sure that's true for most of us. And so I think that hearing other perspectives, not fuck a deliberative dialogue, like I'll sit down calmly while people say violent shit. So that's obviously that's not tonight, but I'm not saying that model is ever the answer, but I also do think that as somebody with a certain amount of privileges, it's important for me to be willing to hear and bring back and then think about how I can advocate for myself and the people I care about. And then the last thing I just want to say is to the point of, we need to be informed because other people are using them, or people who do not have good intentions at heart, government, et cetera, et cetera. I think that what Audre Lorde, who's a black lesbian feminist, if you're not familiar, said is like, the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. And that is, at the end of the day, my opinion on AI.
Wonderful. I think my takeaway, the reason why I did this is because I, kind of like I said at the very beginning, as a newsroom, there's this organization called Trusting News, right? And it's ironic. They look to us a lot for like how we're doing things. And this is one thing I'm like, their advice is just put up how you're using AI and it will cause trust. And I'm like, I don't think that's fucking true. Like, I don't think that's how trust is made when it comes to a really divisive topic like this. And so the point of tonight was selfishly, I used you all as my guinea pigs to help me write up our AI ethics policy. And the bad news is that I haven't come away with anything that is necessarily like really good for me to write up this AI ethics policy, except for be ethical. With that being said, thank you to our panelists so much for coming tonight. The movie is going to start in about 5 minutes. You're free to stay. You're free to close out. The movie is the AI documentary, How I Became an Apocalyptimist, which tackles all the things that we talked about tonight in both really interesting, kind of bad and good ways. It's probably not the best movie, I think, as far as like that kind of captures the mantra of the moment because it was made a couple of years ago, or at least produced a couple of years ago. But it is still an interesting perspective to hear, and that's again the entire point of these conversations is to walk away with new perspectives, not new minds changed. So thank you again. Thank you everybody for coming up tonight. Have a great night. Thank you.
Each other.